Mrs. Sinatra, your husband has been having you followed for 6 months. These photographs prove it. The private investigator's manila envelope hit Mia Farrow's marble coffee table with a sound that seemed to echo through her entire Beverly Hills mansion. Inside were dozens of surveillance photos showing her every move, shopping on Rodeo Drive, having lunch with friends, even private moments in her own backyard. But what made the 23-year-old actress's blood run cold wasn't just that Frank had been spying on her. It was the realization that the man she'd married wasn't just controlling, he was planning something that could destroy her life forever. The investigator, a former LAPD detective named Ray Morrison, who specialized in Hollywood divorce cases, had been hired by Mia's mother, actress Maureen O'Sullivan, after she'd noticed troubling changes in her daughter's behavior. Mia had always been independent, spirited, even rebellious, but since marrying Frank Sinatra in July 1966, she'd become increasingly isolated, nervous, and secretive about her daily activities. "Your mother was right to be worried," Morrison told Mia as she stared at photograph after photograph of herself being watched by men in dark suits. "These aren't just bodyguards, Mrs. Sinatra. This is systematic surveillance. Your husband isn't protecting you, he's studying you." The photos dated back to December 1967, just 18 months into their marriage, but they told a story that made Mia realize her fairy tale romance with one of the world's biggest stars had become something much darker. The surveillance wasn't random or protective. It was methodical, designed to catalog her every movement, every relationship, every moment of independence that might threaten Frank's control over his young wife. December 15, 1967, Morrison read from his notes as Mia examined a photo of herself having coffee with her friend actress Sharon Tate. Subject met with female friend at Beverly Hills Hotel. Conversation lasted 2 hours. Subject appeared agitated, frequently looking around restaurant. Friend seemed to be offering advice or comfort. That had been the day Mia had finally worked up the courage to tell someone about her growing fears about Frank's behavior. Sharon had listened with increasing alarm as Mia described Frank's explosive jealousy, his demands to know where she was every minute of the day, and most disturbing of all, his casual references to what happened to people who disappointed him. "He talks about people like they're chess pieces," Mia had confided to Sharon that day, unaware that Frank's surveillance team was photographing their every expression. "Sometimes I think he forgets I'm a person, not just another possession he owns." But Morrison's investigation had uncovered something far more sinister than simple jealousy. The private detective had followed the surveillance team back to their base of operations, a small office in West Hollywood that was registered to a company with ties to Chicago organized crime figures. Frank wasn't just using Hollywood security firms to watch his wife. He was employing the same people who handled much more dangerous assignments for much more dangerous clients. "Mrs. Sinatra, I need you to understand something," Morrison said, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years in law enforcement. "The men watching you aren't just gathering information for divorce proceedings or to satisfy a jealous husband's paranoia. They're creating what we call a control file, a comprehensive dossier designed to give someone complete power over another person's life." The control file Morrison had managed to piece together was terrifyingly thorough. It included not just surveillance photos but financial records showing every penny Mia spent, detailed reports on her friendships and professional relationships, and most chilling of all, psychological profiles that analyzed her emotional vulnerabilities and suggested methods for exploiting them. One report dated February 1968 had made Morrison's blood run cold. Subject shows increasing signs of independence and potential flight risk. Recommend implementation of isolation protocols to limit outside influence and increase emotional dependence on primary subject. Frank. Consider leveraging career opportunities as control mechanism. Morrison explained what this meant in practical terms. Frank's people were recommending that he systematically destroy Mia's career prospects and social relationships to make her completely dependent on him. The young actress who'd married a legend was being turned into a prisoner, and the walls of her cage were being built one surveillance report at a time. The photographs Morrison showed Mia revealed the scope of Frank's operation. There were pictures of her meeting with her agent, meetings that had been secretly recorded, photos of her having dinner with directors and producers, dinners that had been monitored by men with listening devices. Even her visits to her mother were documented with detailed reports on their conversations and emotional states. Your husband knows about every career opportunity you've been offered in the past year, Morrison told her. More importantly, he knows about the ones you've turned down and why you turned down them. He's not just controlling your current choices, he's manipulating the options you're given. Maya began to understand why so many promising film roles had mysteriously become unavailable to her, why directors who'd been eager to work with her had suddenly stopped returning her calls, why her agent seemed increasingly reluctant to pursue certain projects. Frank wasn't just her husband, he was the invisible hand controlling her entire professional life. But the most devastating revelation came when Morrison showed Mia a series of photographs taken inside her own home. Someone had been inside their Beverly Hills mansion photographing private areas, documenting the layout, even taking pictures of personal items like her diary and private correspondence. These were taken when you were both out of town last month, Morrison explained. Someone with access to your house has been documenting everything. Your personal belongings, your private spaces, even your security systems. This goes way beyond surveillance, Mrs. Sinatra. This is preparation. Preparation for what? Mia asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer would be something she didn't want to hear. For whatever your husband might decide to do if you try to leave him. Morrison's investigation had revealed that Frank's control over Mia went far beyond what even a possessive husband might do. The surveillance operation was being run like a military intelligence gathering mission with multiple teams, sophisticated equipment, and a level of coordination that suggested serious money and serious connections. The financial records Morrison had obtained showed payments totaling over $200,000 to various security firms and private investigators over an 18-month period. That was more money than most people made in 5 years, and it was being spent solely to monitor and control one 23-year-old actress who'd made the mistake of falling in love with a man who confused ownership with affection. Mrs. Sinatra, I've been doing this for a long time, Morrison said. I've seen jealous husbands controlling spouses, even dangerous stalkers. But I've never seen anything like this. Your husband isn't just watching you, he's building a comprehensive intelligence file that could be used to destroy your life, your career, and your relationships if you ever try to assert your independence. The photographs Morrison had collected told the story of a young woman whose every movement was being catalogued, whose every relationship was being analyzed for potential threats to her husband's control. There were pictures of Mia with her sisters, with her mother, with friends from her acting days before she'd met Frank. Each photo came with detailed notes about the relationship, the level of influence these people had over Mia, and recommendations for how Frank might limit or eliminate their access to his wife. One particularly chilling report focused on Mia's relationship with her mother. Maureen O'Sullivan represents the primary threat to subject's emotional dependence on primary subject. Recommend limiting contact and creating conflict between subject and her family support system. Mia realized that some of the arguments she'd been having with her mother lately, disputes that had seemed to come out of nowhere, might have been orchestrated by Frank's people. Someone had been feeding information to Frank about her family relationships and helping him manipulate those connections to isolate her further. The evidence Morrison presented painted a picture of a marriage that was really a carefully constructed prison. Frank had used his wealth, his connections, and his reputation to create a system of control that was virtually invisible to the outside world but completely suffocating to the woman trapped inside it. The scariest part, Morrison told Mia, is that this operation is still expanding. The surveillance is getting more intensive, the documentation more detailed. Whatever your husband is planning, he's not finished setting it up yet. Morrison's investigation had also uncovered something that made Mia's decision urgent. Frank's people had been making inquiries about commitment procedures for young wives who might be suffering from emotional instability. The same psychological profiles that documented Mia's growing independence were being used to build a case that she might be mentally unfit to make her own decisions. Mrs. Sinatra, I need you to understand that this isn't just about divorce or separation anymore. If your husband decides you're too much of a liability, he has enough documentation to have you declared mentally incompetent. He could have you committed to a private facility, and with his connections and influence, it could be very difficult for anyone to help you. The threat was clear. If Mia tried to leave Frank through normal channels, she might find herself declared insane and locked away in a private mental facility where Frank's influence could keep her indefinitely. It was the ultimate form of control, not just physical imprisonment, but legal and medical justification for that imprisonment. Morrison's final revelation was perhaps the most terrifying. The surveillance operation wasn't just about Mia, but Frank's people had been investigating everyone in her life, building files on her family, her friends, even casual acquaintances. Anyone who might help Mia escape or support her independence was being cataloged as a potential threat to be neutralized. Your husband has enough information to destroy the careers and reputations of everyone you care about, Morrison explained. If you try to leave him, he won't just come after you, he'll go after everyone who tries to help you. But Morrison hadn't just come to terrify Mia with the scope of Frank's control. He'd also come with a plan. Working with Mia's mother and a network of Hollywood professionals who'd grown alarmed by Frank's behavior, Morrison had developed an escape strategy that could get Mia away from Frank before he could implement whatever final control measures he was planning. The plan Morrison outlined was as sophisticated as Frank's surveillance operation. It involved secret financial arrangements, safe houses, legal protections, and a network of people willing to risk Frank's wrath to help a young woman escape what had become a gilded cage. The escape strategy required careful timing and absolute secrecy. Morrison had identified a 2-week window when Frank would be touring Europe with the Rat Pack, giving Mia the opportunity to move without his immediate knowledge. During this time, a team of lawyers would file the divorce papers while Mia was safely hidden in a private residence outside Los Angeles. The key is to disappear completely before he knows what's happening, Morrison explained. Once the papers are filed, your husband will use every resource he has to find you and bring you back. We need you somewhere he can't reach, surrounded by people he can't intimidate. Morrison had arranged for Mia to stay at a private estate in Malibu owned by a wealthy family who had their own reasons for disliking Frank Sinatra. The house was isolated, secure, and staffed with former military personnel who understood the difference between protection and imprisonment. For the first time in months, Mia would be watched over by people whose job was to keep her safe, not to control her. The financial arrangements were equally crucial. Frank had been systematically limiting Mia's access to money, ostensibly to protect her from making poor decisions, but actually to ensure her economic dependence on him. Morrison's team had quietly established independent bank accounts, credit lines, and legal trusts that would give Mia the financial resources to survive Frank's inevitable attempts to cut off her support. Your husband controls more than you might realize, Morrison warned. He has connections in banks, law firms, even government agencies. The moment you file for divorce, he'll try to freeze your assets, challenge your legal representation, and make it impossible for you to function independently. We're building you a financial fortress that he can't breach. But perhaps the most important aspect of the escape plan was the network of allies Morrison had assembled. These weren't just sympathetic friends or family members, they were powerful people in Hollywood, New York, and Washington who had grown alarmed by Frank's increasingly erratic behavior and were willing to stand up to him. The group included studio executives who owed Mia favors, directors who wanted to work with her, and most importantly, attorneys who specialized in representing women trying to escape controlling relationships. Several of these lawyers had previous experience dealing with Frank's intimidation tactics and knew how to neutralize his threats. Mrs. Sinatra, your husband's power comes from people's fear of crossing him, Morrison explained. But there are limits to that fear, especially when it comes to protecting a young woman from an obviously dangerous situation. We found people who are more afraid of letting something happen to you than they are of making Frank Sinatra angry. Morrison also revealed that Mia's case had attracted attention from unexpected sources. The FBI, which had been monitoring Frank's activities for years, had become interested in his surveillance operation against his wife. While they couldn't intervene directly in a domestic dispute, they were documenting Frank's use of organized crime figures for personal business, which could become evidence in future criminal investigations. "The federal government can't help you escape your marriage," Morrison told Mia, "but they're very interested in how your husband uses his criminal connections for personal matters. Your situation is becoming part of a larger investigation into Frank's business practices." The psychological preparation for escape was as important as the practical arrangements. Morrison had arranged for Mia to meet with a psychiatrist who specialized in helping victims of psychological abuse understand and overcome the mental controls their abusers had established. The doctor helped Mia recognize how Frank's behavior had systematically undermined her confidence and independence. "Your husband has been training you to doubt your own judgment," the psychiatrist explained. "Every time he questioned your decisions, criticized your friends, or protected you from making choices, he was teaching you to depend on his judgment instead of your own. Recognizing this conditioning is the first step toward breaking free from it." The escape plan also included provisions for protecting Mia's family and friends from Frank's retaliation. Morrison had arranged for increased security for Maureen O'Sullivan and had warned Mia's closest friends about potential threats. Several of these friends were quietly moved to different locations during the critical period when the divorce was being filed. "Your husband won't just target you," Morrison warned. "He'll go after everyone who helped you, everyone who supported you, and everyone who might testify about his behavior. We're making sure those people are protected before we make our move." The most chilling aspect of Morrison's preparation was his contingency planning for what might happen if Frank discovered the escape plan before it could be implemented. The private investigator had identified several scenarios where Frank might try to have Mia committed to a mental institution, kidnapped and held at a private facility, or simply made to disappear until she agreed to abandon her divorce plans. "Mrs. Sinatra, I need you to understand that if this plan fails, if your husband discovers what we're doing before we can get you to safety, the consequences could be severe. He has the resources and the connections to make you disappear completely, and he has the psychological profile reports to justify it." Morrison had prepared for these contingencies by establishing multiple safe houses, backup legal teams, and emergency communication networks. If Frank discovered the plan, Mia could disappear into a network of protection that extended from Los Angeles to New York to London, making it nearly impossible for even Frank's extensive resources to track her down. The final element of the escape plan was perhaps the most important, ensuring that Mia's career could survive Frank's inevitable attempts to destroy it. Morrison had quietly negotiated agreements with several major studios and directors who pledged to continue working with Mia regardless of Frank's threats or influence. "Your husband's power in Hollywood is real, but it's not absolute," Morrison explained. "There are people in this industry who are more interested in talent and integrity than they are in staying on Frank Sinatra's good side. We've made sure you'll have career opportunities waiting for you once you're free. We can get you out," Morrison told her. "But it has to be fast, it has to be clean, and it has to be final. Once you make this move, there's no going back, and there's no negotiating with your husband. You'll be declaring war on one of the most powerful and dangerous men in America." Mia looked at the photographs spread across her coffee table, hundreds of images documenting every moment of her life for the past 6 months. Each picture was proof that the man she'd married had stopped seeing her as a person and started treating her as a problem to be managed. 3 days later, on July 29, 1968, Mia Farrow filed for divorce from Frank Sinatra. She left their Beverly Hills mansion with only the clothes on her back and never returned. The divorce was finalized quickly and quietly, with Mia agreeing to a settlement that many considered inadequate in exchange for Frank's promise to leave her and her family alone. Frank never publicly explained why his marriage to Mia had ended so abruptly, but those close to the situation understood that he'd been outmaneuvered by a 23-year-old actress who'd been smart enough to recognize the difference between love and captivity. Mia Farrow went on to have one of the most successful and independent careers in Hollywood history. Frank Sinatra never remarried anyone that young again. If this shocking story of surveillance, control, and escape moved you, show your appreciation with a like, because sometimes the most dangerous prisons are the ones built with gold bars and celebrity glamour. What do you think, was Mia right to escape, or was Frank's behavior just protective jealousy taken too far? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from Hollywood's golden age, where love and obsession often became indistinguishable.